Hey all, this video is over writing your discourse analysis proposal. There's a couple of different ways that you can do this. No matter which way you choose to do it, there will be a couple of things that all students should probably do in their discourse analysis proposal. For one thing, you should definitely tell me what kind of primary research you plan on doing in some way, shape, or form. So tell me, I plan on interviewing this person, or I plan on surveying this group, or I plan on, doing some kind of first-hand observation in this place, that sort of thing. Also, every single proposal should be about 500 words. 500 words equals out to more or less one single-spaced page. Now, if you wanted to do that single-spaced page and something like a Roman numeral outline like this, it still would need to be about 500 words, but you can break it up like that. You can sort of just answer these questions in 500 words. You could also just write, like a long, not really long, but I guess a one-page essay that still addresses, things like what discourse community you plan on researching, what your research question is, what your primary research is, stuff like that. Broadly, what I want you to do is to sketch out what you plan on doing in your discourse analysis. Now, again, these two things I have right here, they're both on Blackboard. This one on the right is both in the syllabus and also in the Module 3 overview. This one right here on the left is this right here, Guidelines for Discourse Community Project Proposals. Now again, there's not sort of a one-size-fits-all sort of format for this. If you wanted to do just answering these questions over here, that'd be fine. If you wanted to write a long essay, or again, a 500-word essay kind of addressing different points, that's fine. If you want to do like a Roman numeral breakdown, like over here, that's fine too. I have some example research questions that may help you sort of figure out exactly what you want to say about your chosen discourse community. Now, of course, you're not limited to these research questions, but if you're having trouble sort of thinking of something to write about, thinking of something to focus on within your discourse community, you could definitely use one of these 4 questions as a jumping off point. Again, I'm not trying to be too strict about this assignment. I'm trying to give you, a couple of different templates that you can fit your work into, but if you still feel like you can get the same ideas across in a different format, I'd be fine with that. I just want to see what your plan is, stuff like that, what your primary research is, that sort of thing. A couple of things to keep in mind, though. One thing for sure is consider, especially if you're a member of that community or if you have some sort of connection to that community, make sure you realize what your biases are and you don't let them sort of affect the tone of your essay. So it would be a good idea to say, okay, so for example, I've had students write their discourse analysis paper on, fraternities or sororities. Usually because they're in a fraternity or sorority. And because of that, their sort of portrayal of the community tends to be kind of biased. It tends to be very butterfly, puppy dogs, kid glove, we do great things for the community. Here are all the awesome things that my fraternity or sorority does around UC or around Cincinnati. And we're just an awesome organization. We're not like those fraternities or sororities that you may see on TV or et cetera, et cetera. And while that may be true to some extent, right? Like I'm sure, many fraternities and sororities around UC do great things for the university and for the community. But there's also another side, I'm sure, to these organizations that isn't so rosy. Like every community has its seedy underbelly, as it were. And if you're a member of a certain community, you may be tempted to strictly focus on the positives, but a good analysis is going to not necessarily, be overly critical, but it's going to give a balanced portrayal, an honest portrayal of whatever community you're talking about. So if you're really involved in whatever discourse community you're analyzing, you'll have a harder job of sort of correcting for your biases and making sure you're not being overly rosy in your analysis. So just keep that in mind. Some other things that you may want to think about are, where is it? Oh, yes, this right here. How texts operate within the community. So talk about like how they communicate, what they use to communicate, brochures, Facebook, Twitter, etc., etc. Also consider non-written modes of communication such as YouTube. In your proposal, you may want to talk a little bit about the typical genres used by the discourse community and why those typical genres are used. One good way to focus your discourse community analysis is talking about, for example, if you look at, I'm trying to think of an organization. If you look at an organization and they mainly communicate through classic print means, right? They don't really have an online presence. They use, mail order newsletters, brochures, whatever. Why does that community, what is it about that community that encourages this print-only kind of communication? Likewise, if a discourse community does all its communication online through certain social media, through email, why do you think sort of the climate or the context of that community necessitates this sort of online-only communication, this sort of communicating in only one particular kind of genre, or only a few particular kinds of genres? Another good thing to think about is, this is kind of related to your literacy narrative. So one way to consider your literacy narrative is what you're doing is you're describing how you've joined a community and learned their literacy. So in your discourse analysis, you can kind of do the same thing. You can look at a community and say, okay, what kinds of literacies do new members have to acquire before they've achieved this kind of insider or expert status? Like, what kind of knowledges, or what kinds of, I'm trying to think of a good way to put this, what kinds of styles of communicating, what kinds of knowledges, what kinds of sort of stances in life are required for someone to gain an insider or expert status, right? So for example, fraternities and sororities, going back to that, right? Like lots of fraternities and sororities make members do things like memorize the Greek alphabet, or like memorize the history or learn the history of different, the fraternity, the sorority, or whatever. Like, there's a certain kind of knowledge and a certain sort of language. You learn all the different traditions. You gain certain ways of communicating, certain kinds of knowledge, and then once you've gained those, you're considered to be no longer an outsider, but now you're like in the club, you're in the community. It's like, how does that transition take place? So there's a couple different things that you can think about. Really, again, needs to be 500 words, needs to be focused on what community you're looking at, what kinds of things you're looking at in that community, what kinds of primary research you plan on doing, that sort of thing. No matter what, though, make sure you're, telling me what community you're looking at, telling me what kind of personal involvement you have would probably be good. Definitely tell me what kind of primary research you plan on doing. And then other sorts of things that help me get an idea on what direction you plan on going and why. I hope this makes sense. As you can see, it's due on Wednesday, July 30th by midnight. You can just email it to me, and I will get you back some comments on it, hopefully relatively soon after you send it to me. But if you have any questions, just let me know.